Looking around the room, I couldn't help but smile. Jerry deserved this happiness. He had a rough couple of years. I was surprised that I was here at all. I called him when I received the invitation. "Are you sure?" He even laughed. "Yes, I am sure. After all, if it weren't for you, I would never have found Anna. If you were any other person, I would already be dead or in prison. You helped me when the most natural thing in the world would have been to turn away. That's why I went to his wedding. He even sat at the main table, although he did not take part in the ceremony. His new wife hugged me when we met. She whispered in my ear. He told me your whole story, but I would like to hear it from you. I've never heard anything like it." I smiled as I watched them. He was 42 and she was 46, but they acted like teenagers around each other. I wished them all the best. I was dancing with the bride when I saw her. I just stopped moving. Anna raised her eyes in confusion and followed my gaze. I tried to free myself, but she grabbed my arm with a death grip. "Calm down. Please don't ruin my wedding." I exhaled loudly, trying to concentrate. "What's happening? What is she doing here? Does Jerry know? If he doesn't know this, then it will probably ruin everything." "He knows. He actually invited her. He says he did this for you. Now calm down and let's finish this dance." That's what we did. I thought about just leaving, but Jerry was already waiting for me at the table. I spat it right in his face. "I can't believe you invited your ex-wife to your wedding. What the hell was going on in your head?" He shook his head, smiling slightly. "I didn't invite her to the wedding, only to the reception. And I invited her for you. Anyway, one evening you'll sit down and talk to her, just for a few minutes. I don't want you to do this for me. I want you to do this for yourself. And her. Neither of you will ever recover if you don't. But I have to tell you, boy, that she really loves you." I sat, thought, seethed. Jerry and Anna took turns staying with me to make sure I didn't leave. I know I must have angered them by whining until Anna snapped. "Please shut up. For someone who's been in war, you're probably a wimp when it comes to it. Man up, talk to her, end it. Then leave if you want. You're letting us all down, and I wish my memories of tonight weren't of babysitting a whiny little girl disguised as a big, strong man." I was shocked, and then I realized that she was right. She also fed me 4 really strong drinks pretty close together. She chose this very moment to appear next to me with tears in her eyes and an outstretched hand. "Will you dance with me, please?" I could be a jerk and yell at her. I could just sit there and ignore her. I could get up and leave, but I took her hand. We walked out onto the dance floor, her all-too-familiar body pressed against mine as we slowly twirled to the song the orchestra was playing. I felt her shake slightly and looked down to see tears falling onto my jacket. I began to free myself, trying to speak. She raised her hand to my lips. "Please don't tell. Just hold me and let me pretend, even for a moment, that you still love me." And this was the crux of my problem. I still loved her. So we slowly moved around the dance floor, each immersed in our own memories and thoughts. I looked back at all the women I thought I loved, including her, wondering why she had to be the only one. The one I need, the one I intended to spend the rest of my life with, only to find out that she was never mine. That's why it hurt so much. I hugged her and let the memories flow on. I foresaw this. I just didn't believe it. He was about 40 years old and weighed less than 150. I was 31. He rushed towards me, and 2 of his friends tried to detain him. I was feeling pretty good. It was Thursday. I had just gotten paid, and my girlfriend was supposed to meet me for drinks and dinner and then dessert. I started early, had a couple of beers while I waited and chatted with friends. I didn't know him and had never seen him in my life. He stood right in front of me. I was wondering what he wanted when I saw his hand move. There was a fight between us. Finally, his friends picked him up, and we laughed for a few minutes before my lady showed up. She saw the beginnings of my bruise and went into mother mode. "What happened, dear?" I made a joke out of it. "Some guy came and accused me of sleeping with his wife. It's sad, really. He must have been in his 40s, short, and had no idea how to fight. But he had the nerve. If some guy messes with his wife, he better be careful." Her face became even paler when I recounted this episode. I noticed this and tried to calm her down. "Relax, honey. I'm fine. However, if you feel the need to kiss me, I won't mind." She immediately kissed him before pulling away with a smile. "Here you go. Did Mom really fix everything? No evil old man can hit my darling. He had to be a pretty big man to attack you. Didn't he notice all those beautiful muscles?" She cooed, stroking my bicep. I later found out that she just wanted me to describe it again. Actually, he was older, short, with a small paunch. He didn't have the skills, but he had the courage. If his wife is cheating on him, it could be very bad if he finds this guy. Melanie fell silent again, then excused herself and went to the toilet, saying she wasn't feeling well. My cousin Bob, the bartender, heard most of the conversation. It's always the quietest ones, you know? He was probably living his version of the American dream, happy as a clam, and suddenly finds out his wife is a cheater. These are the ones you should watch, the ones who can kill you in a fit of rage. I've seen this to some extent 100 times or more. I hope you get the hang of it enough to leave you alone." I nodded, completely agreeing. I hope he finds that bastard and kicks his ass. I saw several people die when they received letters about it while I was in the service. However, he better get the facts straight and be careful. He's not a very good fighter. Melanie returned looking sad. "Sorry, dear, they called from the hospital. There's been a big accident on the freeway and they're short on manpower. They begged, so I had to leave. I'll call tomorrow if I'm not too tired. Love you." She kissed me on the cheek and ran out. This had happened before when she worked as a trauma surgeon at a local hospital. Luckily for me, she worked 12-hour shifts the first week, so she was free from Thursday to Saturday. As for me, I worked a lot outside the city. No, I don't have a high-paying executive job that takes me around the country solving problems for megacorporations or saving the world for the government. I work with stones. That's right, stones. Big rocks, you understand? My father was the guy I just talked about. He flew around the country and sometimes around the world, making his company a lot of money. He was almost never around, so my mother raised my sister and me almost alone, and did a damn good job, in my opinion. When I was 12, my father decided he didn't want a middle-aged, middle-class housewife and traded in for a newer model. She was heartbroken, but my grandfather, who had never truly loved him, was furious. Dad tried to rush the divorce by cutting off leverage. Grandfather stepped in, spent some of his money, hired her the second-best divorce lawyer in the state just because the first one was too busy, and burned it to the ground. Dad fought tooth and nail until grandfather threatened to sue his company for violating the morals clause. His new woman was his assistant at one time. Seeing that his career was in danger, he folded up like a cheap tent and Mom came out smelling like a rose, even if her heart was broken. Dad moved to the other coast, and we almost never saw him again until he attended my high school graduation, offering me a full ride to the best college on the West Coast if I agreed to move. I politely turned him down until he started pushing, and then started screaming loudly, and I physically threw him out of our house. I haven't seen him since then. Mom married again, to a decent man who loved her very much. Surprisingly, she ended up pregnant, and I became a brother at 15. I admired this man, and my sister idolized him. He offered to help pay for college, but did not insist when I decided not to continue my education. Instead, I became part of the big green machine and spent 4 years in operation, a year in both sandboxes. When I came out, I was more in tune with how the world worked, so I used war money to go to school part-time while I worked for my grandfather. As you might have guessed, he was a master mason, which is all he did his entire life. Even at 62, he had a body that most 30-year-old gym rats would kill for. My father couldn't get away fast enough, but I was hooked by the time I was old enough to lift the stone. Grandfather was stacking a pile in the backyard of his house and rewarded me based on how quickly I could put them together. Sometimes I put them together in ways he never imagined, but by the time I was 13, they always stayed together. I became his apprentice at age 14, working during the summer and after school if he worked close to home. In Afghanistan, especially in the part where I was, there was no shortage of stones, and I relaxed by building walls, especially around our positions. When the wall I built saved several lives, including our captain's, the boys soon became avid helpers. We have always had the best fortified positions in the area. The Afghans were excellent stonemasons, and I studied their techniques, sometimes working alongside them to build schools and hospitals. I learned everything I could from them. My grandfather took me into the business as soon as I left. Soon I was doing tasks for him, usually just me and a couple of assistants. He usually did big things. One of the worst days of my life came when he died. No matter how he left at 66. He would retire as soon as he finished his current job. He and Grandma bought a van with plans to travel around the country. Due to his upcoming retirement, he gradually moved the company into my name, so I didn't have a lot of paperwork to do. I was 27. Masonry is a fascinating field. A master mason could earn a lot of money, depending on the job. My company specialized in the construction and restoration of dry walls built without mortar, depending on the size and the way the stones were placed to maintain their shape. This skill was not easy to learn, and we were the best in the region. My grandfather, before he died, made a deal with the state university system to rebuild walls on their 5 oldest campuses. Some of them were more than 300 years old. They were in disarray or completely destroyed. I had a team of 2 master masons and 3 to 4 apprentices at each site. The apprentices were there for training, and we paid from $15 to $20 an hour, depending on their level of skill. As they advanced, their salaries increased. Of course, it took years to become a master, but, as I said, the salary was excellent. There was a question about me keeping the contract, but I convinced them to believe in me. Listen, grandfather was just an administrator until he died. The same masons with the same level of skill are still working. I guarantee that the work will not be affected. They eventually left us, mainly because the company was in my name by then, and they had never complained before, and they knew it would be difficult to replace us. Masons are rare, truly good ones are even rarer. I hated being a manager without being able to lay stone regularly. I solved my problem by hiring my sister Becky. She could actually lay stone quite well, and she could spot shoddy work a mile away. She had just graduated from business school, and there weren't many good jobs out there, so she took it as experience if nothing else. There were still meetings and book viewings to be had, which we planned to coincide with our weekly family dinners. My stepfather Jerry was an accountant, and my grandfather liked him so much that he gave him our business when he married my mother. Grandma will always be there, and she and Mom will participate in discussions, having many years of experience behind them. My little brother Jerry Jr. was 15, and I had already promised him a job the following summer. He started from the very bottom, pushing the stone like all apprentices. He had a fantastic ability with numbers, and I was almost sure that he would not become a mason. No matter, accountants were valuable people too. I was 30 years old when I met Melanie. One Thursday night, she went to a bar with friends. It was an instant attraction at first sight for both of us. Billy, my cousin and owner, played live bands on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I watched Mel do a few quick dances, admiring her grace. She walked up to the bar just as the band started playing a slow song, ordering a mug for her table. When the music started, she grabbed my hand. I hate wasting a good slow song, and yes, I would love to dance with you. Thanks for asking. I was so surprised that I couldn't even speak, and I stumbled after her while my friends laughed. Slow dancing with Mel was supposed to be a high school graduation requirement, just to show how it should be done. I think I fell in love with it before the first song even ended. She was tall, about 5'9", and when she wore her 5-inch heels, she could look me in the eyes. Not a thin model, but not thick either, perfect size. Her breasts were full, but not saggy, and she had the biggest green eyes I had ever looked into. Honey blonde hair cascaded down her back, stopping just above her ass, which no skinny jeans could do justice to. When the dance ended, she refused to let go of my hand and pulled me towards her table. I met her friends, but I still can't tell their names. The orchestra stopped 45 minutes before closing time, and we could talk without shouting. Her friends got tired of waiting and dragged her home. "Damn it, Mel, kiss the guy you know you want. Take his number and let's go," said one of her friends. "You will never forget the first kiss of the one you like." "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked, pulling away. I just nodded. "Meet me at the entrance at 7:30. Take me somewhere for dinner. Bye." And she left. I got up and walked back to the bar where I caught hell from the guys. "It's hard to play like that, Bandit," Billy laughed. "If she pulled out a hoop, I think you would jump through it." I got this nickname because my real name was Jesse James. My father chose him, saying he admired his Robin Hood manners. One day I looked at him. Many historians recognize him as the first documented criminal sociopath in American history. I didn't care why. I didn't care how. I was just excited that she chose me. But I was incredibly careful. You see, I didn't have the best track record with women. Since school, I have had 2 serious romances. The first ended with her stating in no uncertain terms that she had no intention of waiting on me while I was on duty. "I am 19. You may not come back. I don't want such an uncertain future. I care about you very much, and if I'm still alone when you get back, maybe we can start over." Well, I hated it, but I understood. We met again when I returned home, but we had both changed and the magic was no longer there. We found out quite early and parted as friends. The second one I met in college. She was the star of the volleyball team. Tall, muscular, attractive, and the most arrogant woman I have ever met. Someone once told her that she was special, and she believed it for the rest of her life. The volleyball team was back-to-back national champions at a school where the basketball and football programs sucked. This made her a queen bee, with both staff and students bowing to her every whim. Everyone in town knew who Cindy Tolliver was. I wasn't a troll either. 6'1", thanks to my military training and work. I was hard as a rock, even had an impressive 6-pack abs, although I never took my shirt off except when working. Sandy brown hair with hints of red from long exposure to the fresh air, and blue eyes so pale that they seemed almost gray. Besides, thanks to being outdoors so often, I had a perpetual tan. The beauty of drywall construction is that you can do it even in cold weather because you don't have to worry about setting the mortar correctly. So we worked year-round unless the ground was so deeply frozen that we couldn't set the stone correctly. I conducted most of my classes in winter. Cindy was so used to getting her way that it shocked her when someone actually turned her down. It so happened that that day I refused. We were at a popular grill bar off campus. The food was good and reasonably priced. I sat at a large table alone. The rest was occupied by the crowd. They had really good food, and I was about halfway through a large cheeseburger when she and her entourage walked in. 2 more girls and 4 guys. Looking around, she soon realized that I was the only free table. She came up. "My friends and I need a table, and you're the only one free. Could you please decline so we can sit down?" She smiled a wide, fake smile, assuming that I would be happy to disappear for her pleasure. "Yes," I said with a smile before continuing with my meal. She assumed yes meant I would leave, but yes meant I minded, so I continued eating. After a minute or two, she snorted. "Are you going to leave or what? We are waiting." When I finish or a smaller table opens, I'll happily turn it down. Or, since I have so much space, you could all join me. You could go stand at the counter, one of the guys said loudly, pouting slightly. I chuckled. Boy, don't you know that standing while eating makes your legs bigger? I already have a hard time finding decent shoes, so don't get your hopes up. Maybe I should make you leave, he growled. He looked to be about 25 years old and in fairly good shape, but his posture told me that he had no skills. I looked at him for a moment before taking a long sip of my tea, eating a few fries, and sighing. Okay, I see three possible outcomes here. First of all, you're kicking my ass and people think you're a jerk for picking a fight with someone minding their own business. Secondly, I'll shake the dog shit out of you in front of your friends, and everyone will think that you deserve to be a first-class asshole. Or three, you can leave me alone while I finish the last 2 bites and I'll be on my way. Why don't you let your friends sit while you order a drink? By then, I will no longer be there. He pouted. Cindy watched in amazement. She raised her hand. Stop it, Brian. I think it could end badly for you if you don't. Do as he says, order our drinks. We'll be here if this gentleman agrees to share. By then, I was already done. I stood up and pulled out the chair for the girl closest to me. Please sit down at the table. I finished anyway. Have a nice evening. I reached behind the column near the table and pulled out a cane. My leg was in a cast, the result of an overeager student trying to show off for me. He ended up dropping a 65-pound rock on my leg and breaking 2 bones. That's why I needed a table. I couldn't stand at the counter. Her eyes widened. Please stay and let us buy you a beer. Thank you for the offer, but I have to refuse. I can't drink right now because it will interfere with my medications. Brian came back, saw the cast and grinned. Then I realized that he thought it would be easy with me. Of course, he followed me to my truck. Do you think the cast will save you? This only makes things easier. I'll do just that. I heard enough and hit him. I turned to my truck. Don't get up until I'm out of the parking lot. If you do this, I will assume that you intend to harm me and you will not like my answer. Grow up before you get grabbed by someone less patient than me. He was still lying there when I went outside. I didn't know it, but Cindy and her friends noticed he was missing and came to save me. They managed to witness our little conversation. They pulled Brian out, dusted him off, and Cindy pumped information about me out of everyone in the restaurant. Cindy made it a personal mission to find me. She didn't have much luck because I mostly took night classes and didn't interact with the university public. I was older, much more mature and driven because of my time in the service rather than seeking the college experience. She eventually tracked me down to a grill bar. When I entered, she stood up, pointing to an empty chair. It's good that you're here. I saved a place for you. She pointed to the only empty chair at the table. I looked around the room. There were other empty seats, and I was about to head to one of them when she put her hand on my shoulder. Please, she said a word she almost never used, just for a minute. We owe you an apology. Brian was an idiot, one of the many reasons why he no longer communicates with us. I thought I detected sincerity in her voice, so I sat down. To my surprise, I discovered that she and her friends were not dumb athletes. One of them was studying political science and got a good offer from a lobbying group when she graduated. Another was already enrolled at Yale, and the third was planning to work for her father after she got her master's degree from Wharton. Cindy majored in sports psychology, a degree she will use after her career as a professional volleyball player ends. It was nice to watch them fend off fans, discussing the profitability of new sports in the context of their future, and asking my opinion from time to time. If I could, I answered their questions. If I couldn't, I said so. I told them I was too busy with my business to watch many sports, especially the new extreme sports. This led to questions about my profession, especially from the business major. Wow, talk about a niche market. Is this good money? What is your business plan? How much of the market do you control? I raised my hand to stop her. This is great money. I may never be filthy rich, but I will be very comfortable. My advertising is done through word of mouth, and my type of work is not for everyone. Most of the time I work on multi-million-dollar properties. Right now I have two big projects for developers, plus a contract to rebuild the public college system. With the crews I have now, I'm booked for almost 2 years, and I'm flying out tomorrow to talk to the two state college systems to do the same thing for them that I'm doing here. With the crews I have now, this would add another 2 to 3 years of work. I will probably interview and hire some local masons there to get the project started in a timely manner. Even when the economy went down, since I tend to work for the rich, I still had a regular job. They all sat back in surprise. Becca, a business major, spoke first. Wow. I'm writing an article about the viability of a niche business. I think I will give up everything I already have and do it solely for your cause. If you will allow me, please. I thought for a second and grinned. Of course, this will be more free advertising for business. Just a warning that most of the work is far away, so you may have to travel if you want to do in-depth analysis. She grinned. It's not a problem. One of the benefits of being a wealthy parent is having funds to spare, especially if I tell them it's school-related. Cindy frowned at the thought of her following me around, but wisely remained silent. I later found out that she tried to dissuade her, and Becca refused. This is a good opportunity, Sin. The report will really look good on my Wharton application, and I'm not going to mess with him. She smirked slightly before continuing. What he has in mind may be a completely different matter. Let's face it, she was a beautiful, determined woman, accustomed to getting her way. I was more calm and non-confrontational, tending to go with the flow as long as it didn't go against my values. The inevitable happened and we hooked up, starting a pretty intense 2-year relationship. I led a good chase, realizing early on that the only way to preserve justice was to throw it off balance. If she got too comfortable, then my path was different, or came out differently. I spelled it out for her. You may be the queen at school, but to me you're just another girl. Oh, you are beautiful, and I am attracted to you, but I will never be your lackey. I view serious relationships as partnerships, where everyone gives and takes, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. In an ideal relationship, strengths and weaknesses should balance each other, and each partner should take the initiative from time to time as needed. Understand? She gave me a half smile. Oh, I understand. And I intend to be your queen before we're done, just as you will be my king. These were the words I needed to hear, so for 18 months I climbed the mountain, only to discover that at the top there was nothing but a sheer cliff. I think she would have been willing to sleep with me on our first date if I had insisted on it, but I kept her waiting, part of my plan to keep her off balance. I haven't seen her for 2 weeks, despite her calls, texts, and emails. It just so happened that I had a deadline and had to work on the weekends anyway. Her last 2 letters were quite unpleasant. She was not used to rejection and did not cope well with it. Back in town, I ran into Becca, a business major, and Carol, her friend, at a bar and grill. I was sitting alone when they plopped down at my table. Carol smiled widely. So is it true that Cindy left you? Becca saw my face tense and giggled. Look at his face, Carol. I bet the truth is he dumped her. Isn't that right, Jess? I pretended to be polite. I would say that it was a mutual separation. Let's just say that our ideas about relationships were too far from each other. Ha, she exclaimed. I think it was more like her telling you to jump and you explaining that you don't like hoops. Whatever it was, it shocked her greatly. Ever since you disappeared, she's been a screaming bitch. The coach threatened to bench her if she didn't pull her head out of your ass. Come on, talk about the devil. Cindy just came in with a basketball player on her arm. She looked at us sitting next to her and snapped. Leaving the basketball player in the dust, she rushed towards us. He followed, trying to take her hand. The second time, she growled at him. "Let me go. What part of just friends don't you understand?" I could tell from the look on his face that that wasn't what she meant. "Why, Sin? Why are you dreaming about this hillbilly? He was already stupid enough to get away from you once. He's a loser. I bet he could never keep you in the style you deserve like me." Becca nearly fell out of her chair laughing. What did Bugs Bunny say? Oh yes, what a burgundy color. You haven't even finished school yet, and your chances of becoming a professional are slim at best. Depending on your specialty, it could be years before you make any decent money. Right now, Jesse owns his own very successful business and has for many years. He makes good money at 6 figures, and it's growing every year. Not bad for a redneck, huh, Dustin? He was about to protest angrily when Carol intervened. "Dustin, whatever you're thinking, stop. Look at him. He didn't get those muscles in the gym. He has also been in combat twice, so he knows how to hurt and kill people. He probably wouldn't bother taking you apart and putting you back together again FT court. Maybe you could sit at the bar while he and Sin talk. Come on, Becca and I will keep you company." They took him away. Sin plopped down on a chair and looked at me for about 3 minutes before speaking. "The worst thing about people spoiling you is that it works. I know I'm arrogant and a total control freak. I know I can't stand being told no. But, Jess, I'm a good person. I'm in college. Damn, you know I can study. Can we start over?" I sat thinking. She was the kind of person who couldn't appreciate silence, so she started again. "I regret that night. I'll admit, I've never gone this long without sex since I started college. I was brainwashed into thinking that I was a great gift and should be appreciated as such. I know I'm just a pretty girl, but there are plenty of beautiful, better built, smarter, more understanding girls around. Becca and Carol, for example. They made no secret of the fact that if we were really finished, they were interested. But they will never love you the way I do, Jess. They will never melt like I do when you touch them. If you want to wait, I'll wait. You set the pace. I'll follow." 90 minutes later, we were in bed. 4 months later, she wanted to see where we were going. They didn't win nationals that year. She blamed it on me, saying I distracted her from extracurricular activities and kept her energy levels depleted. She was about to graduate from school and had a very attractive offer to join an experienced beach volleyball professional. The pay was pretty good, but she explained that the money was more in advertising, personal appearances, and television. She wanted to do this for 3 years to save enough to continue her studies to the PhD level. After several long conversations, we decided that the smartest thing to do was get married. She actually fainted when I popped the question and gave her the ring. We decided to wait until after her first year of competition to get married. I hoped that by then she would have enough money and drop out of school to focus on her studies. I could afford to pay for it. She was born into a single-parent family, and her father could not afford to help her. We spent a wonderful month together. She traveled with me from job to job, experiencing the cities we were in while I was working. For the first time in my life, I had difficulty lifting large stones. My team chuckled and told me that if I relaxed after training for hours, I would regain my strength. "That's why I pay you lackeys for your hard work. I would never give up my exercise program. Now bring these stones here." When she left, it really sucked. She clung to me and cried like a child. I almost had to tear her away from me so she could catch the plane. It was very hard because I didn't want her to leave. "If you don't like it, honey, let's go home. You know that I have money for your education, so you don't have to worry." She sighed and hugged me tighter. "All my life people have taken care of me. My dad, then school, now you. At least once I need to prove that I can take care of myself. Besides, I signed a contract. I have to do this season." I didn't like it, but I understood. The first year was difficult for both of us. She did really well, and she and her partner finished first in the point standings. The more they won, the more their money became. I watched her on TV, and I really didn't like the thong they were wearing. It's in the contract, dear. The manufacturer offered us an advertising campaign because of our popularity. That's a good number. Honey, you don't mind, do you? How could I not support her? It took us a while, but we did it. It got to the point where we only met once a month for 3 days. I was counting down the days until the end of the season. She returned home, and we tried to catch up. Mom hinted at grandchildren. It seems my sister and I had something in common. We both liked girls. That explained why she hung out with us so often. She was looking for one of Cindy's friends. Eventually, she found a sweet, quiet girl, and they got married. Besides the fact that she grumbled at me, after she came to terms with Becky's choice, her mother began hinting at her to either adopt or go to in vitro. They thought about it. After 4 glorious weeks, she became sullen. I endured as long as I could before standing before her. What's going on, Sin? Don't try to turn me off. We'll sit here until you say so. She chuckled and fumbled a bit before telling me. I signed a contract for 1 more season. They doubled our money, and the exposure costs a lot more. I'm so sorry, honey, but I have to do this for myself. Please do not be angry. I wasn't angry. I was furious. We bickered almost the entire time until she left. Why can't you support me? Only this year, I swear to you. I supported. All last year. You made promises back then, remember? Here's your word when it comes to money. That's not what I said. She became hysterical. I was half listening to her, and after about 10 minutes, she realized that I wasn't hanging on every word. She immediately stopped. In a quiet voice, she tried again. I think I deserve it. You know what? I'll write a contract. If I don't stop next year, the engagement is off. You're welcome, Bandit. It really means a lot to me. I just looked at her. No contract needed. If you don't stop next year, I'll leave. You understand. She turned slightly pale and made a bunch of promises. Promises she didn't keep. At the beginning of the next year, things got even better for them. Her partner, Jonna, called, thanking me for letting her play. This is my last year on tour, so if she doesn't find a new partner, she's done too. I plan to teach and have already gotten a job as a high school math teacher and volleyball coach in a small town in California. I've always been a beach girl. Maybe I'll find a nice, calm guy and get married again. On the other hand, if we had an agreement like you guys, maybe I would still be married. I didn't know she was divorced. I knew that she was married and that he did not like her absence. When Cindy told me this, I gave her a meaningful look. She took the hint and shut up. What agreement, Yana? The way I said it silenced her. Oh, about your understanding. I let the silence drag on, and she became nervous. Sorry, I didn't express myself very clearly. I didn't mean understanding. I meant your understanding. She is very lucky to have you. Need to go. Watch us on TV. This whole conversation left me a little uneasy. As soon as she returned home, I asked her about it. Don't worry about it, dear. She was a little distracted after the divorce. I think it hurt her more than she's willing to admit. Believe me, I won't make her mistakes. I love you too much. When I asked her what these errors were, she answered a little vaguely. I pressed, and she finally admitted that she had an affair with one of the men on the tour, and her husband found out. I give you my word, honey, I will never hurt you like that. I have something to lose. The next break, she was only able to stay with me for 2 days because she had a shoot planned for a swimsuit company. It seems they had a brand of sportswear in addition to swimsuits, and they had all sorts of athletic figures under contract. I admit the pictures were well taken, but the swimsuits made me feel self-conscious. This time it really was a thong, and he and Jonna were paired with 2 future golfers, someone named Steve and a young Spanish player named Juan Pablo. The men wore tight swim trunks, and there were several shots of the girls wearing golfers, thong backs and topless. I was not happy, although there was not even a hint of breasts. She usually called every Monday and Tuesday, but I never heard from her, although I called and left 6 letters. The next week, I returned the favor by not answering any of her 10 calls. The next week, she was home, unscheduled, furious. After she ranted and raved about me not responding, I told her I was just following her lead. It was a huge disappointment from both of us, which ended abruptly. By then, I had reached my limit with her, so I got up and left. 2 days later, she tracked me down at my workplace and begged me on my knees for a chance to talk. Sin spent 2 days telling me there was nothing there, and if I was that unhappy, she would never do a commercial again. She swore everything she could think of that she would leave forever when the season ended. Looking back, it was like she was reading a script, but it was the right words at the right time, and I believed her. She took 2 more photos, both times with a golfer, once in casual clothes and the next time in more modest swimsuits, and in neither photo were they physically touching. It all started when I needed a set of tires for my truck, and I went to the dealer in the city where I worked. It took over an hour, so I crossed the street to have lunch. After lunch, I had to wait another 10 minutes before they finished, so I glanced through the magazines, casually skimming through them. I was interested in a golf magazine from 2 weeks ago. There was a profile of Juan Pablo, showing him on and off the field. The photo that caught my attention was of him sitting in the stands watching beach volleyball and then kissed one of the winners. The article said he went to support his girlfriend. As you may have guessed, the player was Cindy. I was beside myself with anger. I deliberately missed her calls and flew to her next match. She and Yana always lived together, and I arrived there around 7. Yana opened the door and turned pale when she saw me. Cindy wasn't there. I called her in the presence of Yana. Judging by her voice, she was glad to hear me. "Hi, darling. Where have you been? I was starting to worry that you might have replaced me." "I can never replace you, darling. Did I catch you at dinner?" I heard noise in the background. "Yes, it is. Yana and I are sitting in the hotel dining room. The food is actually quite good." I managed to chat with her for a few minutes, while Yana became increasingly paler. I hung up and smiled at Yana. "Yana, did I ever tell you that I served in the army? I spent 2 years in the desert, killing people as often as I could. I won't kill you, Yana, but if I don't get the truth from you right now, it will hurt. Your choice, but if you take the easy way out, now is the time to start." Would I do this? No, but then I was very angry. Yana must have thought I was serious, judging by the frightened expression on her face. She spoke so fast that I had to make her slow down. It all started at the end of the first season. Not with him, but with another volleyball player. "No love," she said, "just stress relief." She admitted that she did the same thing until her husband caught her. She begged, but the deed was done and he divorced her. Cindy hooked up with Juan at the first photo shoot. She told me you didn't mind, Jess. Said you do the same. Said you guys came to an agreement. She was free to indulge her desires, and you did the same when you traveled for work. She also told me that this would all end when the season ended and kept talking about how happy she would be when you guys got married. She lowered her head, saying that she now knew there was never an agreement. Where is she now? Her eyes became huge. Please, Jess, let me call her. Bring her back here so you can talk. I'm sure you can handle this. Tell me right now. I stood up and she recoiled in horror. They are at his hotel on the other side of town. He's playing in a tournament here. She told me the room number, saying that perhaps they were not there, perhaps they were dancing. If you warn her, I'll come back and be even angrier. Do we understand each other? I stood in the lobby and watched them walk hand in hand towards the elevators. I had the room number and could have waited, but I knew what they were doing, so I didn't see the point in waiting for them to get naked. I gave them 3 minutes and entered. We had a not-so-nice conversation, and then I hit him. I walked out the door, took the elevator down, and called the manager. I apologized, saying that I had always been clumsy and fell into the door of room 418, explaining that my friend and I were going to visit. and he was standing outside the door and could have gotten hurt. I gave him my credit card number, telling him I would be happy to pay for repairs and any medical bills. He wanted me to stay, but I said I really had a plane to catch and he could call if he needed me. He could have just asked my friend for my number. I heard about it the next day while I was watching a little tournament he was playing in. The announcers made a big deal about his injury, saying it might just keep him out for the rest of the season, explaining that it was just an accident among friends. The rumor mill in both sports immediately began to grind, and he used his injury as an excuse to fly home. The following season, the announcers discussed his new single status. I didn't say a word to anyone, but many other golfers and broadcasters were staying at the same hotel, and it was impossible to remain silent. Yana and Cindy played the next 3 games unsuccessfully, losing all games in a row each time. At the end of the season, Jana did retire, but Cindy signed a contract with a new partner who had just graduated from college. She played 4 more seasons before quitting and actually getting her PhD. For about 3 months, she tried to get me to talk to her, telling my mother that she was flying over and we would talk if she could get me too. Mom laughed and sent her away. She never came to get her things. So here it is. Not very original. The same thing probably happened 100,000 times every day all over the world. But it was my world that was destroyed. For 2 years, I experienced deep mistrust when dealing with a woman. Then I met Melanie, and the light came back into my life. As I said, she worked as a trauma surgeon at a local hospital, 12-hour shifts on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and on call every other week. I thought it was fate because all she did was work, and I was usually out of town for at least 4 days, so our free time usually overlapped. We started off slow, a few dinners and dances in better clubs than the bar we met at. We watched several TV shows, went to a museum, to a baseball game. She was ready for anything. But on the other hand, all she had to do was bathe her big, beautiful eyes, and I did everything, trying to please her. We never saw each other on the days she worked, although she always called me when she had a break. She lived with 2 other nurses and said they agreed to never bring their boyfriends home. One of us is always working, the other is usually sleeping, so we don't let you guys in so as not to distract us. Plus, last year, before we set the rules, one stole a guy while the other was sleeping. I had to replace both of them. So no guys, baby, rules are rules. When we finally became physically intimate, it was everything I had hoped for and more. She was 27 at the time, in the prime of her life. We were together almost from the time I got home from work until she had to go home to get ready for work. I got tired of renting hotel rooms and started feeling her out. I had a lot of contacts in my business, so when I asked people to look at a house with at least 3 bedrooms on a large lot, I got a good joke. Someone finally caught you. Ha, lucky you. This was a fairly common theme. I just smiled and showed them the photo. The comments back then pretty much went down the lucky bastard line. One interior designer took me on a task. Idiot. Don't you know that 99% of the time, the woman chooses the house? I took her advice and, armed with inside information about houses that were in distress or a homeowner who wanted to offload one due to the economy or divorce, I went searching. Under the pretext that I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible and needed a woman's point of view, I took her with me. The first 5 didn't make much of an impression on her, but on the second weekend we walked into a 4-bedroom house on 3 acres on the outskirts of town. She walked around the house, touched the appliances, and really liked the big kitchen. She loved the layout of the house, which separated the master bedroom from the rest, allowing for privacy. We had to walk all 3 acres, finding a small spring, and it actually touched several large trees. What are you thinking about? Mel looked at me with misty eyes. There are even tree houses here. I am captivated by this house. The next week, I took the day off and did some paperwork. I got a really good deal. They had just started foreclosure and were happy to avoid the process. The owner abandoned it that week, moving to an unknown destination. On Friday, we returned to the house. We walked along it again. I asked her if she could be happy living here. I'm sure I'll like it. Why this question? Because we bought it on Monday. I need you to choose new furniture. Sounds okay? Before she could answer, I dropped to my knees. I hope you like this house. I intend to live in it for a long time. Been with you for a long time. I would love to use 1 or 2 bedrooms someday. All you have to do is say yes. I handed her the ring. A traditional, simple ring with a beautiful large stone on top. She surprised me by collapsing on the kitchen table. Melanie quickly came to her senses. There were tears in her eyes. I didn't get the answer I expected. I love you, Jesse, but I can't marry you right now. I ask you to give me some time. I need to do something before I accept your offer. Please, and I'm asking here, give me 6 months and ask again. I promise it will be worth the wait. This was not the answer I expected, and I was terribly disappointed. She tried her best to calm me down, even going so far as to take me furniture shopping the next day. She had no preference as long as it was strong. We purchased a master bedroom with a California king-size bed, sectional sofa, armchairs, and a rocking chair for the living room. I looked at her as she sat in the rocking chair. She grinned. That would be nice to have in a year or two. This simple statement filled me with hope. I gave her a credit card, telling her to buy what she thought we needed. I took Melanie to meet the family. Mom and Becky liked her immediately. Grandma was not so happy. My little brother was literally drooling over her, and my stepfather was just grinning. I took this as a good sign. I arrived the following Friday, heading straight to the new house. She added a nice dining room and equipped a guest room. The next weekend, I was waiting for her at the bar, happier than I'd ever been in my life, when a guy walked in and hit me. After she disappeared, I had some more drinks with my friends and headed to my new home early to wait for the love of my life. As I was heading to my car, 2 shots were fired and hit a car nearby. This scared me greatly, and I took cover behind the SUV. Then I heard a drunk man approaching the cars, looking for me. Taking advantage of the moment when the man turned away, I disarmed him and confiscated his weapon. The man begged me to let him go and assured me that he had no intention of doing anything illegal. Then we were able to talk. We ended up drinking together, and our confrontation ended peacefully. So we talked again. I apologized again and was surprised when he waved me off. I always knew this would happen. Sooner or later, the age difference and the fact that we didn't enjoy much about our life together were bound to come into play. That and the fact that I go away every weekend. She had plenty of time to play. Well, that explained her free time. He was a truck driver who specialized in dangerous goods, which are best transported on weekends and at night to avoid as much traffic as possible. They paid very well, but on Thursday evening, he was not home until Sunday evening. What are you going to do? He looked at me in surprise. Divorce her, of course. She's yours now if you still want her. I drunkenly confessed my marriage proposal to him. I shrugged. How can I trust her? This is the second time something like this has happened to me. No, we're done. It hurts, but I know from experience that it can be overcome. I drove him back to the car, reminding him to pick up his weapon. Keep it. I don't think I need him around reminding me that it could kill me. When he got into the car, I asked him again what he was going to do. Lucky you. You can just leave. I have to go through a divorce. I'll try to keep it simple. No guilt. Go your way and leave me alone. Kinda deal. There are no children, so there shouldn't be any chaos. If this happens, contact her. Tell her that you are going to accuse her of adultery, and I will act as a witness. This might make things easier. He looked up in surprise and slowly extended his hand. I reached out to the truck window and shook it. Sorry, dude, he said, starting the car and driving away. I watched his taillights disappear. I'm sorry too, I said to the empty space before walking in the opposite direction. I got into the van and drove off. I wasn't hiding from anyone, but I knew I had to wait a little while before I talked to her. It wasn't in my nature to hit a woman, but I wasn't sure I could restrain myself. I pulled into a rest stop and sent her an email. Melanie, I'm not running away, but you really don't want to be near me right now. Don't look for me. I'm out of town and won't be until next weekend. I will take this time to reflect on our relationship. You remember what I always said, don't you? That I don't accept relationships based on lies. Call me next weekend, and if I can control my anger, I will try to listen to everything you have to say. But don't expect me to believe all this. She immediately sent me a short reply. Thank you for at least letting me talk. There are many things about me that you didn't know that I would like to tell you. Unless you say otherwise, I'll be at your house next Saturday at 4. And Jess, believe it or not, I love you. I've been thinking and reflecting all week. My guys knew a little bit what was going on, so they forgave me for being a flaming asshole for the first few days. As Saturday approached, my fear intensified. At least she didn't dress up and try to lure me into bed. She was wearing jeans and a simple top, and she was still the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I was pleased to see, even with makeup, how red her eyes were. I stopped her from going past the kitchen, forcing her to sit across from me at the kitchen table, where she spent 2 weeks trying to decide if it was perfect. She wanted to say something, but I raised my hand. Basic rules. Don't tell me how much you love me. Don't waste our time apologizing. Just explain it to me. Why did you go to bars and date guys while you were married? Do you really think that I can go ahead wondering where you are while I'm working? I can't live like this. Tears streamed from her eyes, and she sobbed quietly for several minutes before she pulled herself together. The appearance of defeat was total. I've already lost you, haven't I? I didn't answer her, so she straightened her shoulders, looked me in the eyes, and shuddered. I don't think it makes any difference, but I'll say it anyway. I grew up poor. The term trailer park trash kind of sums up my childhood. My mother left before I was old enough to remember her, so I was raised by my father and 2 older sisters. I was an oops baby, born when both my parents were in their late 30s. When I was born, my sisters were still teenagers. Dad was a real alcoholic and never once in his entire life told me that he loved me. She sighed, remembering. He died of liver disease just after I turned 18. My sisters then had their own families, one with a second marriage, the other with a third. So, as you can see, I didn't have what could be called a good role model in my life. Then I met Jerry. I didn't love him, but I respected him and knew he would take care of me. I just knew it would turn into love eventually. Everything was fine with us until he took this job. I was bored and lonely. He talked me into going to a nursing program at a local college just to give me something to focus on. I don't think he ever expected me to graduate from school and continue my studies until I became a registered nurse. But for the first time in my life, I had a goal and a valuable skill. The department paid the most money, so I agreed. She was stressful, demanding, and left me no time to think about how my life was going. Jerry made good money, so I put most of my salary into the bank, hoping it would be a down payment on a house. Everything was fine until they changed my watch. Now that he was home, I was not. I made friends who tried to persuade me to stop sitting at home and go have a drink with them, maybe dance. I still wore rings and no one touched me, but it relieved my boredom. I know it doesn't matter now, but I was planning on leaving Jerry before I even met you. Then I fell in love and desired you, and I was happy to have you. When you kissed me for the first time, I knew it was all over for Jerry and me. I still respected him, but I couldn't love him anymore, so I hired a lawyer and started doing the paperwork. But I took my time, wanting to get to know you better. There was no desire on my part to get into a relationship with anyone until I was sure. I don't think you'll believe me, but I've never slept with anyone before you. You're only the second man I've ever been with, and that's the truth. She pulled out some papers. Look at the date. They should have been submitted months ago. I just didn't know how to tell him, and the guilt was eating me alive. That's why I wanted to wait. Dear, I may not be the best person to sleep with you and love you while I'm still married, but there's no way I'm taking your ring until I'm a free woman, and I was going to tell you soon. But I was going to wait until I moved out, and to be honest, I was going to lie a little about the timing. She spoke, waiting. You know, I really believe most of what you tell me, Mel, but I still have some sore spots. First of all, when you realized your feelings, you should have broken up right then. Instead, I think you stayed with Jerry as a backup plan in case I wasn't the one you wanted, and you should have still slept with him while being with me. How do you explain this to yourself? But the most important thing for me is that even if we end up together, I will still have to travel for work. What happens when you get lonely? Will you go out with your friends and maybe find yourself in the same situation again? Will I be like Jerry, hiding in parking lots to kill your new lover? As I spoke, her tears became more and more. I let the air out of my lungs, trying to concentrate. It all comes down to trust, Mel. If I marry, it will only be to a woman whom I trust with my soul and heart, who will always look after our interests. And right now, you are not her. Honestly, I doubt you'll ever become one. But I'll make a deal with you. Get a divorce. Let it pass for a little while, and then call me if you're still interested. Maybe we can start over. Let's see. That's all. Final act. It took her 10 minutes to pull herself together. She wanted a kiss, but I refused. I actually hugged her, and she held me so tightly that I thought I would have bruises later. She stepped back, sniffling. I understand, Jess, I really do. And although you don't really need my promises right now, I will give you one. It doesn't matter if we get back together. You will never, ever find a woman who loves you more than me. And someday, maybe many years from now, even if we are not together, I will find a way to prove it to you. She turned and left without saying another word. We only spoke twice after that. I was too angry, and she was too crying to have a rational conversation, but she was determined to try. Eventually, she stopped talking directly and started emailing me once a week or so. She tried to be cheerful and chatty, but at least after 3 months, they all ended with her begging for another chance. From time to time, I responded if she touched a nerve. She wrote to me about going to therapy and how it was helping her. She even talked Jerry into going with her twice, and her only comment was that it was informative. She started writing less, maybe twice a month, and finally, 7 months later, she stopped. I still have her last letter, and I can't bring myself to delete it. My dear Jess, I know it bothers you when I use sweet words, but this will be my last contact with you, so I will say what I feel, even if you don't like it. Today, I received the papers. I'm officially a single woman again. The second best thing that ever happened to me, I will always count meeting you as my first was therapy. I really learned who I really am. I shouldn't have married Jerry, but I was selfish and looking for a way out of my miserable life. I was too young, too immature, too stubborn to enter into adult relationships. Oh, I went through all these moves, but my heart was never really in it. Even without you, my marriage would eventually die. I think it was inertia and fear that kept me close to him. My time with Dr. Chu taught me to throw away my crutches and stand on my own 2 feet for the first time in my life. Jerry was shocked when I told him I didn't want any of our shared assets and sent him a check to pay for my education. I owed him a lot, and even more. We didn't part as exactly friends, but I don't think he hates me that much now. It's kind of funny if you think about it. Do you remember how I lied to you that I live with 2 other nurses and that I have no boyfriends? I live like this now, sharing a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 more nurses. This works for me, even though I am independent now. I don't think I can come home to an empty apartment. In honor of my divorce, I'm going to give you a gift. Dr. Chu helped me understand that if I were you, I would have a hard time trusting myself. So, I'm letting you go. I hope you have a good life and find a woman who loves you as much as I do. Mel. I stared at the screen for a long time, holding my finger over the delete button. I didn't want to read it again. It was too painful. Instead, I saved it. So I wandered aimlessly through life. If it weren't for my job, I probably would have lost it completely. It was almost 10 months before I went on a date. She was a beautiful woman, the sister of a contractor with whom I had a lot of business. She was witty and eloquent. I really enjoyed the evening, but in the end, we both realized that there was no spark between us. We actually dated twice more before she found someone else, and we decided that was it for today. During this time, I saw Mel twice. One day, while I was sitting in my car at a traffic light, I saw her through the window of a small bistro. She was with a group of women, smiling and chatting. I sat there for so long that the guy behind me had to honk his horn to get me to move. Mel looked up at the noise, looking me straight in the eye as I drove away. Next time at the club, I was on my second date with Tina, and we had just sat down when I noticed her sitting across the room with 4 of her friends. She must have felt someone's gaze on her, because she raised her head and saw me. Time stood still as we looked at each other. In fact, it took about 30 seconds before she burst into tears and ran out of the club. Her friends chased after her, all except one, who stopped at my table. Jerk. Was it nice to show off another woman in front of her? What the hell is wrong with you? I was actually pretty calm. Hello to you too, Gwen. I don't want to belittle your point of view, but I'm not anyone's trump. It's been almost a year since Mel and I have been together. It's a pretty small town. We were bound to run into it sooner or later. Tell her I'm sorry if I upset her, but it's time for her to move on. Good night, Gwen. I turned to Tina, not paying attention to her. She stood there for a few minutes, glaring at me, before walking away, muttering asshole under her breath. Tina naturally wanted to hear the whole story, so I told her. She looked at me and sighed. You may tell yourself it's over, but I saw the look on your face when you saw her. Even when we talk, you watch the door like a hawk, waiting to see if she comes back. And she still loves you. Otherwise, why would her ex make her cry after almost a year of separation? You guys need to clear things up. I didn't pay attention to her remark. We dated one more time before she met anyone she was interested in. Jerry started hanging out at my cousin's bar. It gave us both the same thing. This was the one place Mel would never enter again. He was actually a stand-up guy. As we became more friendly, the guys started teasing him for trying to kill me. I told them to fuck off. He was right on his side. If he hadn't been so drunk, he would have been much more accurate, and I would have been just a memory. One evening, after a few beers, he suddenly asked me a question. Do you miss her? I knew who he was talking about. There was no point in trying to trick him. Every day. He sighed. Me too, but not every day. Just every now and then when I see a mutual friend or go to a place we used to love. I had many years associated with her. You know, the other day I saw one of her nurse friends, one of the few people I liked, and we talked for a few minutes. She said Melanie is called the nun because she doesn't date. She blamed it not on me, but on you. She said that you have spoiled her so much that she cannot even bear the thought of intimacy with another man. She also told me she was in therapy, which I bet you already know. One of her tasks was to write a letter of apology to everyone she had offended. In my letter, she called it cleansing from demons. Do you have anything similar? I admitted that yes, but did not go into details. Well, no matter how much she ditched me, I remember the good times. And there she finally stood up, admitting her guilt. Heck, she even gave me back the money I spent on her nursing degree. I hope she finds someone else who will treat her well. Jerry was lucky. On the day his divorce became final, one of the dispatchers at work asked him out on a date. She was several years older, a war widow, with a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl. They were made for each other, shared the same views, the same beliefs, and he got along great with her children. He was even an assistant coach for the women's softball team. He went so far as to get me and my cousin to sponsor them. We actually took over half the bar, went to a few games, and cheered her on, embarrassing her to no end. But the hug she gave him was genuine, and he looked so proud he was ready to burst. We were already planning his bachelor party. I was happy for him, sad for myself, watching the little girls play, wondering if I would ever be in the stands cheering for my own child. My chances were getting slimmer. I was 32. My clock was ticking, so I laid even more stones, throwing myself into the business, growing it. However, there comes a time when you can saturate your market. I took on more work than we could handle, even after adding new masons. My grandmother and sister already scolded me for this. Let someone else have the contract, Jess. Take care of what we have. If you don't, our quality will slip away, and that's the kiss of death in our field. Think about your grandfather. Do you want his life's work to disappear? This made sense. I stopped taking on more work, even outsourcing a few small projects to competitors who I knew would do a good job. I got my business back on an even keel. I ran into Becca from college when she asked me to come and offered me a job. She emailed me using her last name, so I was surprised when I saw her. She was a little thicker, but still attractive. In addition to being very successful in her career, by her own admission, she had a successful marriage. He had 7-0 money, according to Becca. She held his hand while she told me about it, embarrassing him to no end. He was probably 10 years older, and they had just had their first child. What they wanted was quite elaborate, including a small stone cottage designed for play. She wanted it to be built like the Scottish cottage she had seen on their honeymoon. We talked, and I agreed to take the contract if I could do it on my own schedule. I took 2 apprentices and started with the border and secluded walls. I did the preliminary work, laying out the lines, choosing the stones. She needed a local field stone, a little trick, because there were no local suppliers. I was lucky enough to purchase several existing walls from the estate, carefully marking each stone to be reassembled in its new location. There was also a stone chimney on the property, the last remnant of the original house. I walked closer, looked at it, and saw an example of stonework at its best. Every stone, right down to the stone hearth, was perfectly shaped. It impressed me so much that I asked Becca to come out and watch it, explaining my idea. She immediately understood everything. I built her a stone patio with a fireplace in the center, complete with half the walls tapering back into a V shape that trapped the heat reflected into the living room. It was the perfect item for cool fall evenings. Years later, she sent me a photo of her 3 children and their friends sitting by the fire roasting marshmallows as snow fell around them. An unexpected bonus came when I took it apart and found a hiding place under the largest hearthstone. This was actually a fairly common practice at the time, the only logical way to store valuables. Fire was much riskier in those days. There was a wooden cigar box containing a half-full bottle of whiskey, still good because it had been stored with the cork down, 2 love letters from the 1870s, and an engagement ring. In a small bag were 2 silver dollars and some other small change. The letters were from his mistress, the one for whom he bought the ring, but he died in a fire before they got married. Technically, I had owned it since I bought it, but I passed it on to the estate's heirs, who fought for it a bit before donating it to the local historical society. It made the papers, and there were a whole bunch of hearths dug up all over the county. If anyone found something, they didn't say anything. After I finished the project, Becca invited me to a party to show off my work. I went mainly on business. After all, most of their friends were quite wealthy. I made a few connections and ended up sitting with Becca when the party ended. I still talk to her from time to time, she said out of the blue. I knew she was talking about Cindy. I haven't really thought about her in years. Without asking me, she pulled out some photos on her phone. Cindy cut her hair much shorter than she did in college and probably gained 30 pounds. It didn't look too bad on her tall figure, but the tone I remembered was long gone. In one of them, she stood next to a man who was a couple of inches shorter. They hugged each other, smiling at the camera. Her second husband, Becca said. The first one was a complete failure because both had affairs. A year later, she met David when he brought a client to her. They ended up having coffee, which led to a date that led to the altar. She also went to a therapist and told him the truth about you, her first husband, and that she did not consider herself a suitable wife. After much talk, he convinced her that he was willing to take this risk, to trust her, because he had no choice. He simply couldn't imagine life without her. They ran away the next day. A little less than 2 years have passed, and they are inseparable. I believe she will make it this time. I think I surprised her when I told her I was happy for her. I thought about it later and decided that I was really happy for her. Apparently, it took her years to come around, and I hoped it was worth the wait. For me, I quit dating while trying to get my head in order. I couldn't imagine how anyone could get involved with someone who still had Melanie's ghost hanging around. On a whim, I sent her an email. Mel, I just want you to know that I wasn't trying to make any kind of statement when I saw you at the club. It was not my intention to hurt or inconvenience you. It was a complete coincidence. I had no idea you were there. If it's any consolation, it ruined my night too. Jess. She answered me the next day. Sorry for ruining your evening. I had no right. I know it's over between us. I know that we will never be together. I just can't stop loving you. In fact, I've already given up trying. Time is supposed to heal, but all it does is make me miss you even more. I received an offer from another hospital, far enough away that I wouldn't have to run into you. I think I'll take this job and start over. Maybe then I'll be healed. I really wish you happiness. Mel. P.S. If you ever want to talk, just write. I thought about it. I didn't actually see her that much, but if moving would help her, I was all for it. Maybe then one of us would be happy. And here we are, swaying to the music. She seemed disturbingly familiar and yet completely different at the same time. Jerry bribed the orchestra and they played 3 slow songs in a row. I would have stopped after the first one, but she wouldn't let go. I thought about pressing the issue, but didn't. When they finally ended, she grabbed my hand. Will you sit with me for a while? Please, I'll get on my knees and beg if I have to. The thought that she would embarrass us both made me agree. She led me to a small table at the back of the room, far enough from the orchestra to talk. She tried to make small talk, and I let her chat for a minute before stopping her. What do you really want to say? Mel, stop beating around the bush and lay it out. She lowered her head for a second, then looked at me. I have never seen a more determined expression on her face. I can answer this in one word. You. I want you to come back. I tried. Jess, I really, really tried, but I can't let you go. I can't forget about you. I can't stop loving you. I can see it in your eyes. You still think about me. I know you don't go on dates. My friends seem to feel obligated to tell me that every time they see me. Why? You are the whole package. Good looks, rich, great job, bright future. I bet that since we broke up, girls have been hitting on you a lot. You could have chosen, but you didn't. I think I know why. I can tell you why I didn't find anyone else. First of all, I didn't want anyone else. I've thought about going on a date a couple of times, but I look at them and wonder how they can compare to you. And I tell them, no, I never stopped loving you. I didn't even try. Can we start over? I think you will find me completely different than I was before. I beg you, give me just one chance. Go on one date with me, and if you feel that I am unworthy of you, that I will not bother you again. Think about it and call me. My number is still the same. Thanks for listening, and thanks for dancing. It meant a lot to me. She jumped up and kissed me on the cheek before leaving. I saw her talking to Jerry and Anna, hugging them both before disappearing out the door. Jerry came and sat down. Well, so what? Don't act like an idiot. Will you give her another chance? You must. You deserved it. I looked at him as if he had just turned green and started speaking in a foreign language. He just sighed. Everything depends on you. There's something else I wanted to tell you. From the day she met you, she never had sex with me again. She apologized for this in her letter. She told me she had been exposed to something at work, and it would be 6 months before it was safe to have sex again, and she would need to get tested to make sure she was disease-free. I should have been angry, but by the time she told me, I had already forgotten about her. I think deep down I never loved her either. Not the way she should be loved. Now go ahead and congratulate us one more time before we go. Niagara Falls, can you believe it? I wanted to go somewhere warm, but she wanted it. I have a feeling that Anna will get whatever she wants. She wanted me and she got me. She was the one who insisted that I invite you both here. She can be very persuasive. I like it. I thought about this for about 2 weeks. In a nearby town, concerts were held on Fridays on the lawn of the old courthouse on Fridays in the summer. Blues, folk, rock, and country bands. A male and female blues duo with the catchy name Freeman Feel Bad Jr. played that weekend. And Sweet Thing. I've heard them before, and they were pretty good. I called Mel and asked if she wanted to attend. There was a long silence, and I thought she had hung up before I heard a quiet yes and what sounded like a sob. It seemed like a safe choice. Surrounded by so many people, there was no chance of going into anything too deeply. I didn't even pick her up. We met on the spot. I got there early and secured a good spot by arranging the chairs in advance. She appeared exactly at the appointed time in the appointed place. At first, she didn't notice me, and I looked at her for a while. She was wearing a pale yellow sundress, her long curls glistening against the setting sun. This was enough to take a breath. Her smile blossomed when she saw me. She rushed towards me, about to hug me, but stopped herself. Instead, she shyly touched my arm. We walked around the square before the show started, looking at the shop windows and people. I grabbed 2 glasses of red wine, which I knew she liked, to sip while we listened. The duet turned out to be very good, of professional quality. The guy was older, about 45, and she looked like she was in her early 30s. Their voices blended very well, and he was a slide virtuoso. Their patter between songs was humorous, and their song choices had something for everyone. We laughed at the jokes, but when the guy sang a song about a woman cheating, there was sadness in his voice. Mel tensed and looked at me, blushing. The next song, a duet about rekindled romance, brought a smile to her face. By 9, the concert was over. She stood up while I was clearing away the chairs and looked at me thoughtfully. "Thank you for tonight, Jess. It's not over yet, unless you want it yourself. I'm hungry. Would you like some pizza from Yanni's?" Tears glistened as she took my hand. This was one of our favorite restaurants when we were together. The Yanni's restaurant was located on the square and served Greek and Italian cuisine. They stayed open an extra hour on concert nights and did good business. I was doing stonework in his outdoor dining area. Yanni personally served us without even letting us place an order. Ah, young lovers, I'm afraid you have forgotten your old friend. Nice to see you again. 1 Yanni's pizza, right now. A large pizza half filled with anchovies is mine. The other half filled with mushrooms is hers. We ate and packed the rest. I walked her to the car. "Well, thanks for the evening, Mel. I had fun." She held my hand since we left the restaurant. Before I could say anything else, she hugged me tightly, kissed me on the cheek, and jumped into her car. I stood there and watched her tail lights go out, wondering what it all meant. We dated twice more, a stupid romantic movie that gave her a reason to hold my hand and snuggle while she sniffled. Then a day at the local fair. She made me walk through all the exhibits with her, groaning at the canned goods and cakes, laughing at some of the exotic vegetables. She stopped dead in front of a huge display of quilts, a dozen or more, ranging from traditional to modern, all fabric art. Tears welled up again and memories came flooding back to me. One evening, when we were cozy in my new home, she showed me a photo of a quilt in one of her magazines. I always wanted to learn this. "Why?" Because, silly, I want all the children to have their own personal blanket, something durable that they can pass on to their children, and those to our great-grandchildren. She realized what she said and looked at me nervously. I grinned. How many blankets are we talking about? She smiled, glad that I wasn't angry. Oh, at least 3, and maybe more, if you're lucky. She laughed at the stunned expression on my face and pressed herself against me again, turning the pages. Returning to the present, I said nothing, but took her hand and squeezed it gently, grabbing the card in front of the display and putting it in my pocket. Quilted Fabric Club. Join us and learn the art of quilt making. We have classes, workshops, and you'll soon be sewing with confidence. Hey, it's her birthday soon. I thought it would be a wonderful gift. The candies will be eaten, the flowers will fade, but the new skill will remain with you forever. We went on rides, at least the ones she could put me on. I watched her ride the worst ones herself. Come on, everyone is afraid of something, right? She thought it was funny that the battle-hardened veteran was afraid of the little old roller coaster. She had her own fears, the main one being thunder. At the age of 6, she was almost struck by lightning. It hit the ground 10 feet away, knocking her and her friends unconscious. Now she stays inside, away from the windows, and will shake until it's all over. Holding her in my arms helped her a little. We shared our first full kiss as we sat and watched the fireworks they put on every night until the fair ended, huddled together in the arena stands. It just happened, none of us planned it. We parted and looked at each other with obvious amazement on our faces. We didn't say a word to each other for the rest of the evening, and when I took her home, she just walked out and walked into the house. We haven't seen each other for almost 3 weeks. We weren't avoiding each other. I was still trying to catch up. The weather left us behind again, and it took us so long to catch up. We talked on the phone a few times, and she seemed distant. I started to wonder if the kiss was a mistake. I called home and told my family that I had finished the project and intended to be home by Thursday. They seemed happy. They were worried that I was working too much, and it was burning me out. I sighed, throwing my bag of dirty laundry into the hallway. I'll wash it later. At first, I wanted to take a shower in the worst possible way. The only change I've made since I bought this place is remodeling the bathroom. It was larger and had room for 4 people in the shower. It had 6 heads that could be turned on simultaneously, individually, or in any combination a person could think of, with a choice of full flow, massaging pulses, or soft mist. My first thought when I made it was how much Mel would have loved it. It was completed only 2 weeks after our breakup. When you live alone, especially if you've been living alone for a while, you tend to not worry about how you dress when you walk around. I stepped out of the shower naked, drying my hair with a towel. I thought it was high time to get a haircut. When we met, I had short hair, and she talked me into letting my hair grow out. She said she liked to run her hands over them. I thought I heard a giggle as I pulled off the towel. Mel was sitting on the bed. What? How? Why? Her face broke into a smile. Your mother told me that you will be home today. The question is why you never made me return the keys. So here I am, and I need to tell you something. Now get dressed and wait for me in the living room. She giggled again. She swayed out of the bedroom, feeling that I was watching her, looked over her shoulder and grinned. Here's another thought. Stay here and I'll join you. This thought brought me complete delight. No, I muttered. I'll be out in a second. I grabbed my shorts and shirt, forcing myself to relax. This took a few minutes. When I came out, she was sitting in a rocking chair looking at the backyard. Turning to me, she gave me her beautiful smile. I need to tell you something. Don't interrupt. I'd like to find out before I lose control. Please. I nodded, lowering myself onto the section she insisted on. I thought about changing the furniture when we broke up, but it worked well in the room, and it was comfortable. Most of the time, I usually sat in a chair. Every time I sat on the sectional flashes, My mind would flash of us cuddling or making love, and I would end up moving. I know that the last few times we talked, I wasn't myself. It's because of the kiss. It reminded me of the things I've lost, the things I want back. I want you to come back, to chase me around the house like before, until I get tired of this game and let you catch me. I want to take the air mattress to the backyard, lie on it like we used to, look at the stars as we snuggle together, and then make love. I want you to love me again. She stopped, collecting her thoughts. I started to speak, but she raised her hand. Wait, I'm almost finished. And then I realized something. You already love me. I know it. You know it. Everyone we know knows it. Love is not our problem. Trust is an issue. I lied to you in the most terrible way. It took a while, but now I understand how much I hurt you. So I had to find a way to regain your trust. Here's what I came up with. Let me go back. You have security cameras. Add a few more to them. Bring it wired the whole house. Then, while you're away, you can access the channel at any time to see what I'm up to. Put a GPS tracker on my car, and then at a glance you can tell where I am and where I've been. I did some research online. We can get a personal tracker, like the ones criminals wear. This model is a bracelet. Again, you can see at a glance where I am at any time. I would do all this just to prove that you can trust me. Wow, Mel, she's obviously thought about this a lot. Unfortunately, she missed one thing. I explained this to her as gently as possible. First of all, let me thank you for thinking about how we can get back together and be ready to do everything you described, but it will never work. When she tried to speak, I raised my hand. My turn. Listen to me. All you are willing to do is what is not necessary. If we did that, you wouldn't be a partner in the relationship. You'd be a slave. Although some of them seem fun from a game perspective, you won't be able to live with them all the time. Oh, I'm sure you'll try, but sooner or later you'll start to get resentful. I know I would. None of this contributes to trust, quite the opposite. If I have to go to such lengths, it will only reinforce the message that you cannot be trusted. I can't live like this. Deep down, you know it all. Now the tears were flowing like a river. She stood up and groped her way to the door. I caught her and pulled her with me onto the sofa. She buried her head in my shoulder and cried for several minutes. I caressed her, enjoying the way she felt in my arms. Finally, she pushed me away. So it's all over. Quite the opposite, baby. I think we're just getting started. What you did today, what you wanted to do, took a lot of courage. That's why I think we might just do it. So let's not rush. Let's continue from where we left off last time. Okay? She looked up and smiled. It reminded me of the sun popping out of a bad storm. Indeed? Yes, honey, it's true. In the morning, I took her to breakfast and then to the apartment to get clothes. Today, she worked a double shift to do a favor for a friend. Then she returned home for the weekend. I met her roommates and understood why she said she was thinking about moving. Amanda was tall and blonde. She looked decent, but couldn't compare to Melanie. She was married twice, divorced twice, and both times her infidelity was the reason. The last time she was with a woman, she fell a little in love with Mel. Beth was a stocky redhead who could be attractive if she just smiled. She didn't cheat on her husband, but she had anger issues. In reality, he postponed the wedding until she got help, and she lied to him, saying she had completed an anger management program. After they got married, she turned into what her ex described as a screaming bitch who was probably thrown out of hell by the devil because even he couldn't stand her. He accepted irreconcilable differences because it was the easiest way, and in this case, it turned out to be true. She was truly surprised, although he begged her for help right up until the day he submitted the documents. She didn't take it well and ended up getting a restraining order keeping her 500 feet away from him at all times. She walked through it twice before the judge got fed up and sent her to jail for the weekend. She begged for counseling, got it. But after 3 sessions of listening to her scream, the counselor recommended a divorce. It was sad, and he promised that he would stop the divorce if she would only get help. Of course she didn't. The funny thing is that she is now being treated because the hospital told her it was either unemployment or unemployment. Nobody needs a nurse with manners like hers. They didn't hesitate for a second. As soon as Mel closed the door, they attacked me like rabid hyenas. So you're the guy who's making her head full of crap. I know people like you. You cannot or do not want to forgive. Your precious pride won't let you. You'll end up making her jump through hoops until you get tired of her and leave her again. Asshole. I know my jaw dropped. I've never seen anyone spew venom like that. It must have been her day to get the chance to vent to someone. I made a mental note to never turn my back on Beth. Amanda was no better. If you hurt her, I swear to God it will be the last thing you do. She deserves better. She deserves to find someone who can love her right, and not some asshole who will dominate her for the rest of her life because she made a mistake. She probably would have said more, but I had heard enough. My good mood has long since evaporated. Listen, first of all, Mel and I are none of your business. I turned to Beth. And you, I can understand Amanda a little. She's in love. You have no excuse. You just don't want anyone to be happy, period. Your husband should have become a saint for putting up with your crap for so long. I was on a roll. Looking back, I probably should have been a little calmer, but it felt good to vent, especially to bitches you didn't care about. So fuck off, both of you. Your luggage doesn't interest me at all. Now we have our own past. Don't expect an invitation if we decide to get married. Mel caught the last part of our conversation, looking at him like a deer caught in the headlights. Amanda saw her and immediately started. I hope you listen to me, Mel. This guy isn't going to take you back. He's just messing with you, waiting for you to get comfortable before he drops the hammer. I've seen guys like this before. Honey, notice he said if. My second husband was exactly the same. Just too damn proud to forgive a mistake. At that moment, I was beside myself with anger. That's right, Amanda, that's right. Pride will not allow you to do such things. But pride will allow you to look yourself in the eye in the morning, confident that you are true to your beliefs. Pride will also allow you to walk down the street and look other people in the eyes for the same reason. I have often thought that the old saying about pride was completely wrong. Pride does not go away before the fall. It comes after it. When you're lying in the dirt and everything you wanted, everything you believed in, everything you loved was taken from you, pride will lift you up. Pride will force you to live according to your principles. It may keep you up at night, but it will make you realize that your insomnia is bearable. And now, as exciting as this conversation may be, Mel is ready and we're leaving. I took her hand and dragged her out the door. Never in my life so glad to be able to leave this place. Mel was silent the entire way to the car. When we got home, she put the suitcase in the trunk of her car instead of carrying it. I was confused. Mel, honey, let's take your suitcase to the house. There is no need to travel with it everywhere and risk it being stolen. He will be here when you arrive tonight. She didn't look me in the eyes. I guess I'll pass. I'll be very tired, so I might as well just go home and go to bed. I need to think without distractions. This really hurt me. What happened, Mel? 3 hours ago, you were whining because you volunteered to work and regretting it. You even tried to find someone to cover for you. Now, because of the rantings of some seriously concerned women, even after yesterday and this morning, you don't want to spend time with me. Fine. Go and find yourself. But be careful. Once I already learned to live without you. Become passive-aggressive now, and that will be the last straw. And before you go, I'd like to have my key back. I think she realized she had made a serious mistake and tried to correct it, but I was too judgmental. Fuck it all. After we finally let's reunite, does she want to retreat? She was finished. I'm done with her. I can do just fine without her. Of course, this was not the case. I missed her more than I did before we broke up the first time, angry at myself for allowing myself to believe. I found solace in my work. You have to be careful when dealing with big rocks. That's what my broken fingers taught me, so I worked on my lag, trying to catch up before the cold weather slowed us down. I didn't go home for 3 weeks and only took one day off to do laundry and check on my house. I was a little surprised to see her car in my driveway. I was even more surprised when Mel flew out of the house and grabbed me, knocking us both to the ground. She grabbed me with a death grip, muttering something almost incoherent. She was quite strong, although she didn't make a living by lifting rocks. I was tired of being gentle, so I took her hands and pulled them back until they were behind her back. Shut up. I had never raised my voice to her like that before, and it silenced her. I took advantage of this and stood up, leaving her on the ground. I left her lying on the ground, whining like a wounded animal, deciding to leave her there. I was almost closing the door when her screams turned into sobs. Even though I wanted nothing to do with her, I couldn't stand her cries of pain. I went back and tried to pick her up, but she refused to move, so I picked her up and headed for the door. Her arms wrapped around my neck as tears flowed, sniffling into my neck. I threw it on the sofa, not very carefully, and went to get some water. "Drink," I said, sitting her upright. She drank water, looking at me with her huge eyes. "How did you get here?" I asked when she calmed down. She started to speak, but it was incoherent. I raised my hand, and she instantly stopped. "I'll try again. Answer me in simple words. Speak slowly, and be truthful. One lie, and I'll never speak to you again. Get started." She spoke with her head down, so quietly that I almost asked her to speak louder. "I broke the window. I replaced it immediately. I knew where you kept your spare keys, and I used them. That evening, after finishing my shift, I came home, had a terrible fight with Amanda and Beth, and they threw me out. I could have gone to a motel, but I ran away here like a wounded animal. Because I was a wounded animal, destroyed by my own actions. I just wanted to be close to you, begging you to help me win back your love. You weren't here, and you didn't answer the calls, messages, or emails I left for you. I felt safe here and waited for you to come home. If you want me to leave, I will leave." She seemed completely destroyed. Kicking her out was like a beat-up puppy. "Well, not now. I still have some things to think about, and I'll need your help. Order some pizza, I'm starving. I'll be back after my shower." Her eyes lit up with hope, but my gaze extinguished it a little. When I came out of the shower, dressed in a tracksuit, I noticed that she was freshened up, wearing little makeup, her hair neatly tied in a ponytail. It made her look younger. I was spared the conversation by the arrival of the pizza, which Mel grabbed and hurried to the kitchen. By the time I paid, she had already set the table, and there was a wine glass next to the plate. I returned the wine. "The water will be fine now. I want to have a clear head for later." She nodded, poured us both a glass, and let the wine sit. I noticed how she ate, nibbling the edges, glancing at me from time to time. She seemed a little slimmer than I remembered. "You are on a diet?" She shook her head. "I just haven't been hungry lately." I nodded and ate another slice of pizza, thinking as I ate. I really didn't know what to do. We were quite a confused pair of human beings. We finished, she cleaned up a bit, and we sat in the living room to talk. I could tell she was disappointed that I didn't sit next to her, preferring to sit facing her in the chair. "Tell me the truth, Mel. I know you want us to get back together. I want us to be together again. But how? How can I trust you? What can you say or do to get us back to where we were before everything fell apart? Offers?" She actually had a plan. Marital consultation. Pam told her about it at work. She went through a rough time with her boyfriend just before they were to get married, and they went to see if they could save their love. She said it worked wonders in making them both realize that they were not ready for married life. They postponed the wedding for a year, but she said it was worth the wait because when she walked down the aisle and met him at the altar, they were both sure in their hearts that this was the path they were meant to take. She'll even get a discount through her job. Will you think about it? I think this is the only way to forget what I did. I want to try and I beg you. There is a chance that we will understand that we will never be together, but I am ready to take advantage of it. Living in this half-life is killing me. Please promise me you'll think about it. I realized that it took her a lot of strength to make this little speech, and I promised to think about it. She nodded hopefully. She stood up, and I heard her wandering around the bedroom. A few minutes later, she came out, dragging her suitcase behind her. Will you help me load this into the car? Well, to hell with it. She squats in my house, begs me to go to couples counseling with her, and then runs away again. Where are you going? Mel seemed surprised. Probably to a motel. I know you don't want me here right now. I think I'll look for an apartment next week. I picked up the suitcase, surprised by its weight. Instead of going to the door, I carried it back to the bedroom, threw it on the bed, and began unpacking. She followed me and watched me silently before timidly asking what I was doing. I'll put your clothes back. Now, would you like to help me? I can do without you if I have to, but I can't put things where you want them. I picked up one of her panties, twirling them in my hand. Suddenly embarrassed, she snatched it from me. I'll make a deal, she said through tears. I'll take them off and put them on, but you need to take them off as often as possible. I have never seen a woman cry and smile at the same time. This gave her face a variety of expressions. We agree, I said softly, kissing her on the cheek, but there will be some rules. I think I'll drink some wine now. Would you like your glass? She nodded, her hair falling into her eyes. 10 minutes later, she snuggled up to me, taking the wine. Mel was silent for a few minutes, enjoying the wine and the moment. Finally, in a voice so quiet that I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, Regulations? Yes, Mel, rules. I'd like to say we can handle it, but until we solve our problems, I'm not sure. You will continue to live with me. If you want, you can sleep in my bed. We won't get better if we're apart. Make an appointment for a consultation as soon as possible. Write me the dates, but please try to do it on Friday evenings so I can work. I'm ready to try, Mel. You know that I love you more than anything in the world, but deep down I must know that in the future I can completely trust you. And if for some reason one of us decides it just won't work, we'll let the other know immediately. Agree? I expected her to jump for joy, but she said nothing as she sipped her wine. I was about to speak again when Mel spoke. Yes, with all my heart, and I will sleep in our bed. Where else should I sleep? In return, I want something from you. I want you to relax at work enough to spend more than one day with me from time to time. I need your absolute promise that, barring a natural disaster or cataclysm, you will be present at all sessions. Promise me. I was about to answer when she raised her hand. One more thing. I want you to try to find a way to prove how much I love you and that I will always be faithful to you. Whatever it is, I'll do it. But I have my own insecurities. Perhaps someday in the future I will ask you the same thing. Deal? Agreed, I said. We didn't make love that night. It just didn't feel right. Not because I didn't want her, especially when I saw her pajamas. It wasn't some sexy negligee or dress or exotic lingerie, but a very thin shirt with matching bikini bottoms. It was damn hot. She snuggled close to me while I stroked her, and within minutes she fell asleep. I lay awake wondering if we were finally on the right path to happiness. I lived by my words, working half a day or not working at all on Fridays so I could be home for sessions. The advisor turned out to be a man, which surprised me. I'd bet good money that she would choose a woman. She chose him because he had the highest success rate in helping couples resolve their problems than anyone in his practice. I liked this guy. He was calm, relaxed, and told me that he likes to keep drama to a minimum. We each had a session in private before heading out together. In each of them, he asked what we thought the results of the sessions would be. Our answers were very similar. He was calm, but did not throw punches, and often Mel began to cry before the end of the session. I didn't cry. but he pushed my buttons well enough to make me want to punch him once or twice. He got Melanie to admit what I suspected. She stayed with Jerry, especially early in our relationship, as a security blanket in case I wasn't what I seemed. When she realized that she wanted me, she began the divorce process, but did not file documents. The reason was that until I proposed to her, she was not sure of my feelings. I called it bullshit, and the consultant actually agreed with me. Is this true, Melanie? In the 6 months you were dating, especially after you started spending weekends with him, didn't you feel confident that he loved you? Even if you denied sex to your ex when you dated Jesse, you still shared a bed, still cuddled together, exchanged affection. Then, when he left, you did the same to Jesse. Yes, you got divorced, but only after you got caught. She almost shouted her answer, surprising us both. Do you think I don't know what I did? I betrayed them both, and I ruined all chances for happiness I would ever have. She calmed down a little, sniffling. I don't think that's necessarily the case, Mel, or you two wouldn't be here right now. However, I think we went as far as we could in these sessions. We both looked at him in surprise. But we are not healed yet, Melanie exclaimed. No, that's not true. But with my help, you went as far as you could. You both are obviously still deeply in love. It was easy to spot. You want to stay together, to have the happy future that you both desperately want. This is a given. It all comes down to trust. Can Jesse trust you? No, it's the same with you. In your opinion, you are not sure that he will ever be able to get over what you did, and that at some point he might want revenge. You both need to make a decision soon on whether it's worth the work and pain you both will go through to solve your problems. I cannot do this. I do not have a magic wand to wave over you and declare that you are healed. I can only wish you luck and say this. I think that if you can achieve grace from each other, you will never regret it. And if you can't, well, you need to cut your losses and go your separate ways. I wish you all the best. We stood at the door of his office and looked at each other in surprise. Melanie said it best. Where do we go from here? I didn't have an answer. We tried to move forward for 3 months. We'd have happy days, and then something would trigger one of us and life would get stressful for a day or so. We quickly became disillusioned and cracks appeared. I thought about her often while I was working. She called me every evening, which I looked forward to, and then sent pictures of her in our house, proving she was there. It got boring quickly. Enough, I told her one evening. Stop sending me photos, and stop locking yourself in the house every night. It's driving us both crazy. Occasionally come out somewhere, take it easy with friends, even go out for drinks with people you work with. I will live by the assumption that you are an adult who made a mistake and learned from it. If I don't, then it really won't matter, will it? I think she understood what was going on. A few days later, she went to the cinema with her best friend. She loved horror movies, which I had no interest in, and called me the next evening telling me how much fun she had before getting serious. Thank you, darling, for love and for trust. She fell silent, gasping. I felt very good. I even joked to her about how glad I was that I no longer had to be dragged into some lame movies. Her old spirit broke through. They don't suck. They're a form of art, something that a caveman like you just doesn't understand. Despite your weak intellect, I still love you. Good night, dear. No matter how hard I tried, I knew she knew something was holding me back. She had gone quiet over the last week or so, and I knew this could be the beginning of the end. Oddly enough, all this came together in one place at a flea market. Mel loved the smell of incense, and there were little burners all over the house. Most of the smells were pleasant enough that I endured it. The place had a kiosk run by a woman who looked like a poor version of a voodoo queen who had literally hundreds of scents. Mel was running low and asked me to take her. We both loved to go, often spending hours watching. We actually bought very little, but every now and then we came across a treasure, at least in our opinion. I watched her flutter back and forth, The epitome of lithe grace, smiling, occasionally raising the stick to her nose. She sensed that I was watching her, looked up and smiled the familiar smile of joy that I loved so much. Then her eyes clouded over, and she looked down sadly. At that very moment, I realized that she would soon leave me if I could not change, and very soon. It was late summer, and as we were leaving, one of those quick seasonal storms hit, all the wind and lightning blowing as fast as it came. The first clap of thunder sounded and Mel jumped slightly. I instinctively hugged her, calming her down. Luckily, we were inside, in one of the many halls that seemed to go on forever. We got there late, and they were already starting to close. "Wait here, honey. I'll take the truck and drive up to the door." I rushed to the parking lot and got wet almost instantly. I thought hard as I waited my turn to move closer to the door, almost praying to overcome my blockage and love her the way I was meant to. As I pulled up, the old radio station started playing a song that I had only half listened to and had always loved. "Slow dance, swaying to the beat of the music, slow dance, just me and my girlfriend," came from the speakers. I looked at the entrance, trying to spot Mel, and glanced at the bumper sticker on a small van parked nearby, assuming it belonged to an incense seller. There were a lot of stickers on the van, but the one that jumped out at me sent shivers down my spine. Life is not about hiding from the storm, but about learning to love dancing in the rain. I had it. A way to prove to me beyond any doubt that Mel loves me. I opened the door and turned up the volume. I stood in the pouring rain while lightning flashed and extended its hand to me. "I understand everything. Darling, if you really love me, I mean truly love me, you will come out and dance with me. This is our last chance. Please, please, let's dance." I almost shouted to be heard. Everyone looked at her, wondering what she would do. I know she couldn't see them because of the rain, but tears were streaming down my cheeks. She crept to the door, trembling with every flash, while I stood with my hand outstretched 3 feet away. Mel looked into my eyes, trying to see if I was being sincere. She must have gotten the answer she wanted, because in one long step she was in my arms, holding me tightly, wincing with every blow, but swaying, kissing me. The song ended after about 90 seconds, and I picked her up and put her in the truck. Yes, this dance was short, but it said everything that needed to be said. She loved me enough to prove it by facing her greatest fear. What better demonstration could there be? We sat in the parking lot, wiping each other off the dashboard with wipes, laughing and crying together. Then we went home and made love. And complete, total love was what we did. 9 months later. Looking at them, I felt weak. The newest, coolest, scariest roller coaster on the planet. They had loops, riffles, and a sheer drop of 325 feet. But I had to do it, so I held her hand tightly as we stood there, ready to buckle up. After a week of slow dancing in the rain, she told me that someday she would ask me to do something in return to show my absolute love for her. I immediately agreed, and this is the result. The coaster was designed like a bullet, and it was a single-seater. She let me go first, holding my hand as they buckled and locked me. Then I felt sheer horror as she let go of me and retreated. "Won't you come with me?" For some reason, she smiled and cried at the same time. "I can't." "Why the hell not?" I almost screamed as the car rushed forward and picked up speed. Rule number 3. I read the rules as I walked by. Rule 1. You must be at least 48 inches tall. Rule 2. Anyone with a heart or any other medical condition should not ride this ride. Rule 3. Pregnant women are not allowed to enter. Wait, what? Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.